Good morning, one and all. I'm intellectuals, honorable guests, faculty members, participants, and dear students. It gives me immense pleasure to extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of Department of English and RB Narendra Boravaki College, Sri Rampur, who has clubbed all of us for this national webinar on transcreation in literature. As you know, Rayat Shikshan Sanstha and our college have been serving the nation since the year 1919 and 1960 respectively. Thus, it has been decided to keep serving and educating our youth. Now I call upon Mr. Sunil Devkar, Convener and Head, Department of English, to welcome the guests and introduce them. Mr. Sunil Devkar, sir. Please, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mr. Sunil Devkar, Convener and Head, Department of English, distinguished delegates and participants within India and abroad. I welcome to the national webinar organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell and Department of English. It is a glorious moment to extend my warm wishes on behalf of Rayat Shikshan Sanstha's RB Narendra Boravaki College, Sri Rampur, accredited by NAC third cycle PGPA 3.44. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Honorable Minatai Jagdane, Managing Member of our Mother Institute and Chairman of our College Development Committee, for accepting the invitation and presiding over this national webinar on transcreation in literature. I would also express my sincere thanks to Honorable Principal Dr. Nanasaheb Gaikwad, who encouraged and motivated us to conduct this webinar. The Sanstha has completed 100 years of educating the socially and economically downtrodden section of the society. It is continually achieving new milestones under the able leadership of President of our Sanstha, Honorable Sharad Pawar Sahib, and Chairman Dr. Anil Pawar. Concept note of the webinar: COVID-19 pandemic has brought about drastic change in all spheres of life, including educational field. Teaching of literature is not a mechanical process as compared to teaching of other disciplines. Literature teaching involves experiencing and sharing of emotions through online teaching. Transcreation is a concept used in the field of translation studies to describe the process of adapting a message from one language to another while maintaining its intent, style, tone, and context. A successfully transcreated message evokes the emotions from source language and carries the same implication in the next target language. It is related to the concept of localization, which similarly involves comprehensively adapting a translated text. Transcreation highlights the translator's creative role. Further, you will be enlightened by the speaker of the webinar. The keynote speaker of the webinar is Honorable Parin Somani, who is an international academic scholar, motivational speaker, educator, writer, author, and journalist. With over 31 years of professional experience, she has spoken in excess of 84 online, international, and national webinars in the capacity of chief guest, inaugurator, keynote speaker, chairperson, and presenter. Parin Somani is a multinational award winner who has been recognized as the Inspiring Bharat Ki Lakshmi by 2020 Coffee Table Book. In the magazine issue of Beauty and the Best of July 2020, she was identified as unsung fighter of COVID-19. On 2nd August 2020, she received Best Motivational Speaker Award 2020 by the English Educators Society. On 3rd March 2020, she received the C Inspires Award 2020 at the House of Parliament, England. On 25th January 2020, she was awarded the Feelings Pride of India Award 2020 for her contribution to Indian society. On 19th November 2019, she received a Good Citizen Award 2019 at the All India National Cadet Corps Camp for Girls. On 17th November 2019, received the Aprovasi Bharatiya Hindi Seva Samiti Award, the International Diaspora Award 2019 from Akhil Bharatiya Sahitya Parishad. She was presented a Shield Award and 2 other awards in customer service and global networking by State Government of Goa Chief Minister Dr. Pramod Sawant at the vibrant Goa Global Expo and Summit October 2019. Parin Somani has traveled extensively to more than 79 countries globally. She shares her knowledge and research in international conferences, governmental and non-governmental organizations through literature, teaching, writing literature, composing, and contributing to educational books, journals, sharing poetry, promoting education and literacy, creating reforms, writing, and featuring in variety of newspapers, all in attempts to make a positive global change. Tomorrow, she is also a speaker on the topic DK Marathis College. He's assistant professor in English to MSM College, Kaimkulam, Kerala. She also worked at International Indian School, Saudi Arabia. Dr. Harsha received Dr. Ambedkar Distinguished Service National Award from Dalit Sahitya Academy, Delhi for social work. Another award, Navodaya Shrestha Puraskar from Navodaya Sanskriti, a state award of Kerala, and Kavya Pratibha Award from Malayalam Sahitya Vidhi. She has presented more than 25 papers in national and international seminars. Chaired several national and international seminars, including as a resource person. She is also active in the field of counseling and social work for more than 20 years. She has the research article in UGC Care Journal, research articles in other referred journals, 2 chapters, an anthology, and 4 books published, including poetry collection Mirror of Life. We are honored and pleased with your presence in the webinar, ma'am. Further, I would like to especially welcome our international guest, Dr. Laimot Naibo, Associate Professor in Christian University of Indonesia, who has made this national webinar into international webinar, along with his colleagues who actively participated in this webinar. He has a huge research experience and published 29 papers in national and international seminars, including Scopus Index Journal. He is a renowned journalist, reviewer, and trainer of life skill. He is versatile personality in community service and certified book editor. We salute for your achievement and welcome you, sir. I also like to welcome various members of Savitribai Phule University, Dr. Ashok Chaskar, Dr. Pandurang Babad, Dr. Balasaheb Sagade, and other advisory committee members. We received totally 427 registration. It includes 32 participants from abroad, 122 participants from other states, and rest from Maharashtra. Once again, I welcome you all in this great function of national webinar. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for your thought-provoking address to set a perfect platform for our keynote speaker and resource person. Now I would like to invite His Excellency, Principal of the College, Dr. Nanasaheb Gaikwad, to deliver inaugural address. Sir, you merely require any introduction. We feel proud for your hard work in the field of education. Dr. Nanasaheb Gaikwad, sir.
Morning to all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you are.
Good morning to all of you, all
Good
the
morning.
participants, eminent speakers, President of today's inaugural function, Honorable Meenabai Jagdani Madam, she is member of Managing Council of Translator Sanstha, the most dedicated institution, a group of institutions in India, Translator Sanstha. She is also the president of College Development Committee of Rao Bahadur Narayan Rao Boroke College. The eminent speakers, resource persons, Dr. Harsha Vishwanath, Dr. B.N. Gaikwad, Somani Madam, all the participants, Dr. Ashok Kaskar, Head of the Department, Professor Sunil Devkar, and all the participants. I welcome you on behalf of Rao Bahadur Narayan Rao Boroke College on this very good morning session of the national webinar on transcreation and in literature. As we all are aware of the things that translation, it's the simple phenomenon. However, transcreation, it's a bit tricky, but it is also interesting phenomenon. As we know that the participants, I welcome you on behalf of Rao Bahadur Narayan Rao Boroke College on this very good morning session of the national webinar on transcreation and in literature. As we all are aware of the thing that translation it is phenomenon. However, transcreation is a bit tricky, but it is so. Maybe all the dignitaries in this national webinar. So I welcome all the dignitaries. I also welcome President of this today's webinar, Honorable Minatai Jagdane Madam, who is member of Managing Council of Rayat Shikshan Sanstha, and the resource persons, Dr. Harsha Vishwanath, Dr. B.N. Gaikwad, Dr. Somani Madam, and all the participants, Head of the Department Sunil Devkar. I welcome all of you for this national webinar, and we know that this webinar is related with the transcreation in literature. So as we know that as the various countries, various languages, various religions, various cultures, so all these cultures must be known, all these traditions must be known, the style of the language, the intention of the language, all this can be considered within this transcreation. So it's not the translation of something, whatever may be the books or maybe some poem or a group of poems. Okay, so it is something which we keep the tone of the language, we keep the style of the language, we also keep the culture as it is, as the source language is having, and we try to transcreate the thing so that it would be audible or readable to the audience which will be who are interested in looking these type of creativities. So with these words, I conclude myself. I welcome all of the participants again, and I thank you very much that for your overwhelming response to contribute your views to this national webinar, which will be lasting for 2-3 hours later on. So I again welcome you all, and I conclude myself. Thank you, man.
Parin Sumani ma'am, please. Today's keynote speaker. I request ma'am to start your session. Please, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Good morning and good morning to all, and a very good morning, early good morning to the other part of the world. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me here today. It is my great privilege and my pleasure to be with you all. President of webinar, Honorable Minatai Jagdan, convener and head of the Department of the English, Professor Sunil Diokar, Principal Dr. Nana Sahib Gaikwad, Dr. Baliram Gaikwad, Vice Principal and Head of the English Department, Dr. Harsha Vishwanath, Assistant Professor in English, Mr. Shafiq Sheikh, Assistant Professor in English, Dr. Lambot Naiboha from Indonesia, and the organizing team for inviting me today here, and all the delegates who have joined me on this virtual conference to share our knowledge and ideas together on a transcreation in literature. Please give me a moment while I can share my presentation. Thank you. Transcreation in literature is a very interesting subject, and it's very close to us as it is deemed to have its roots in India. Today, we will learn more about translating text and transcreating in the entertainment industry, thus gaining a wider perspective of transcreation
I request ma'am, please disable annotation. Please disable annotation on your screen, please. Please disable annotation on your screen.
Okay.
मगाचं instruction आता ऐकलं होतं.
Let me know when would you like me to start.
Please, ma'am, start. No problem, ma'am. Please continue.
Okay, so I'll just go back again. Transcreation in literature is a very interesting subject and very close to us as it is deemed to have its roots in India. Today, we will learn more about translating text and transcreating in the entertaining industry, thus gaining a wider perspective of transcreation in literature from our wonderful speakers. So we are going to be hearing them as well. So I will be talking a little bit about transcreation in a literature itself, including its definition, how it is linked to each other, and how we can incorporate in our lives through literature. So what is transcreation? Transcreation is a combination of a translation and recreation. It describes the process of adapting a message from one language to another, but at the same time, it maintains its context, intent, style, tone, cultural background, and so on. Not strictly faithful translation. Transformative recreation of inherited tradition. So that is the form, but the term transcreation was used by the Indian poet and translator Pilal. It was in the preface to its translation of Shakuntala, which we all know about it. It is when he explains and discusses the challenges the modern translator tackles when dealing with the translation of ancient texts. He quotes, the translator must edit, reconcile, and transmute his job in many ways, becomes largely a matter of transcreation. Therefore, the therefore, if we are looking the word, the transcreation is still evolving. The transcreative tradition not only stemmed from India, the term was found in Brazil in literature, written by the poet called Paulo de Campos. He encouraged the term transcreation rather than translation and characterized a new approach. This new approach gave rise to creating literary translation, which was a target-oriented translation. So, stemming from this use of transcreation in literature tradition, the term was used. It is still used in contemporary times within marketing and advertising. Therefore, when we say that transcreation is about taking a notion of one language and completely recreating it another language. It is normally applied to the marketing of an idea, product, or service to international audience. The language, therefore, must be resonate with the intended audience. We know that transcreation is a message that can introduce the same connotation, the same emotions, and has got the same impact in the original language as it does in the second or a third language it is being translated into. So in literature, it means recreating text for a target audience. You can translate something that is copyright into literature that is written. So, and we may think that any literature that we translate, we actually transcreate. Well, in a way, that is a correct, because when we translate any writing, we want it to reflect every aspect of this piece of literature. However, with a diverse range of literature source, it might be difficult to create the same impact, which means that a higher level of creativity is required to relay the same message in a different form. For example, a technical piece of literature may not have this every challenging language. It may not contain many references towards culture or emotions, while something else like advertising or marketing is more difficult to translate. Their text is needed more creative thinking. I would recommend cultivating an interest in understanding the language source, like having a second thought about it, and at the same time, the second or the third language, you may wish to evoke the same message. Seek to understand emotions behind the literature can be creative in adapting the text, images, or videos. You can use your knowledge and skills on culture, whether it is your own or another culture. Familiarize yourself with the text you are working with, or be interested and motivated to write about. During this process, ensure you are flexible and have a calm mind and enjoy, because it is when your creative ideas flows the best. So remember, when you're doing the process, you have to be very flexible and have a calm mind, so you can enjoy it. So the creative ideas flow nicely and beautifully. It can be defined. It can be defined in a different ways. But then, if we look at it, it is also important to preserve our culture despite residing in the East or the West. This is reflected within literature. For example, transcreative practices in India are often performed on sacred texts. As a result, transcreation in India are not considered as replacement of the original. Many Hindu sacred texts are transcreated through literature or in the form of films or drama like Mahabharata, like Ramayana, aiming to evoke the same emotions and key messages. Many are made in the East and you. As a result, the transcreation in India are not considered as a replacement of the original. Many Hindu sacred texts are transcreated through literature or in the forms of films, drama like Ramayana or a Mahabharata, aiming to evoke the same emotions and the key messages. Many are made in the East and use subtitles to translate in English. However, the literature may not have the same impact because remember the language, the subtitles are changed. So when we use the language, it makes a little difference when we translate into the different language. May differ for the target audience. Simultaneously, some literature written in the West can be misinterpreted by the Eastern schools of thoughts and vice versa. Therefore, it is vital to understand cultures, the language, emotions, and the target audience prior to transcreation. I was born in India, in Mumbai, and I'm residing in the UK. Therefore, I have or had to build a bridge to connect the Eastern and the Western culture. The deeper the understand of the culture and the literature, what I'm here. So what I'm trying to make a point, the deeper understanding of the culture I have, the easier it becomes to understand the literature and use creativity to transcreate. There are many different literary work that can be transcreated. For example, online website, books, leaflets, brochures, advertisement, and list goes on. Therefore, to transcreate effectively in literature, it is important again to understand the language, culture, emotion, and target audience. When we talk about transcreation in literature, we want to ensure that a good connection is made between the message we wish to convey our target audience and maximize the relevance of culture. We must be mindful to understand the following factor: cultural heritage, shared values, practices, including expression of emotions, gestures, body language, facial expressions, a literary text, tone of voice, humor, setting, casting, and tonality. So when you look at the language is like little bit more subtle than demanding a correct or incorrect answer. As a true translator can be equally accurate but produce to a very different finished literary text. It is believed that the more abstract literature is, the more variation there will be between two translations. For example, there is not much variance in translating operating instruction for a microwave, as it is a set of instruction to follow with little vagueness in comparison to the variation in translation of a literary work like a poem or a story, as it has a lot of emotion and a personal interpretation. So when we translate, we can only transmute the original text. If we want to communicate its meaning in a readable and a smooth way to a foreign readers, but we can view transcreation and research the subject through multi-dimensional perspectives, through perceiving it as a form of accommodation, reflex, and change. We can view transcreation as a metaphor for recreation. It may overcome the division between the source-oriented and target-oriented translation. It can be perceived as the answer to look for creative meaning that could express the novelty of original text expressing in the target language. Therefore, there are many examples illustrated within literature where authors have transcreated their literary work into different languages. For example, the auto-translation of Tagore from Bengali into the English language can be debated to be a transcreation rather than a general translation. This is because the poet reduced the size of its translation considerably when translated in English. There was also a change in the vision. The original poem has been perceived to evoke to another poem in the target language from the original. This has illustrated that transcreation is not a mindless imitation of the original text. It requires great imagination. When we start trying to transcreate, we must be mindful of certain situations or demand of society influencing our decision as we translate, as this can tweak our viewpoint and form the base of the transcreation process, as our views and current situation can influence upon our creative. After finishing your education, you will step into the professional world. You will have a lot of knowledge that will help you in professional careers. But you need to build bridges so that you can fulfill your professional requirements in your chosen occupation. Understand your professional language and apply the skills that you have learned so that they can be transcreated in a variety of different languages through interest and emotions. You can do this by learning what you do not know and teach others what you know. Believe in yourself. You can achieve success in your life through your knowledge. Apply yourself and work hard. It is our duty to give back to society through the work what we carry out. Work together and help each other, because I believe that it is only by working together that we can make a positive global change. I would like to end by quoting Nelson Mandela. He said, if you talk to a man in a language that he understands, it goes to his head. Okay? Only goes to his head. But if you talk to him in his language, it goes to your heart. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, madam, for your presence and valuable guidance. Thank you. Dear participants, may I now request Dr. Baliram Gaikwad, Vice Principal and Head, Department of English from NG Acharya and DK Marathi College, Mumbai. He will talk on Translator as a creator, process and need. Sorry, joining from Mumbai, Dr. Gaikwad, sir.
Good morning to all of you.
Very good morning.
Thank you. Honorable Minatai Jagdane ma'am, the management member, the RB Narayan Rao Borwake College, Shrirampur, Principal Dr. Nana Sahib Gaikwad sir, the convener and head of the Department of English and convener of this international webinar today, Dr. Sunil Devkar sir, the all other organizers, the technical team of this particular webinar, dear colleagues joined from different parts of the world, and my esteemed friend, Professor Dr. Pareen Samaniji from London, my another very dear friend, Dr. Harsha Vishwanath ma'am from Kerala, dear all colleagues, colleague friends. Friends, first of all, in these difficult times, I wish that very soon we all will come out of the globally difficult time that we all are facing, and probably now this world population is moving towards that phase that we come out of this danger called corona. Today also happened to be an important event called Dhammachakra Parivartan Din, and being 14th October, today is 85th Dhammachakra Parivartan Din. So I also wish the audience for this day. And friends, I extend my greatest thanks to Dr. Sunil Devkar for inviting me to this very, very prestigious international webinar. I'm supposed to talk on transcreation in literature related to this translator as a text creator process and need. Dr. Devkar, I'm in my office and I cannot share my slides, so I hope that's okay if I continue this way. Dr. Devkar.
Yes, sir, no problem.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Okay,
Vairam,
thank
please. You're
Right,
audible
okay.
and we will enjoy your lecture.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So friends, if we talk about translator as a text creator, let me tell you first to begin with what is meant by translator and who is a translator. Are you a translator? Am I a translator? Or rather, I would say literate or illiterate, whether we know that particular skill of translating or not. We all do translation. All of us are translators. All of us are diplomatic. At any point of time, during conversation, with a child having conversation with his mother, he needs a chocolate. Even there also is a lot of diplomacy. What the child wants, what the message to be conveyed to the mother, the child puts it very diplomatically. Parents also put it very diplomatically. Taking this very simple example in day-to-day life also. So we all are translators. And how best we are at this translation process, that decides the success of translation, whole creation. And that's where translator as a text creator, we all that way are translator. But this is something, a general idea that I'm talking about. But to be very specific, literary translations when we do, what exactly happens, what kind of a process happens. The one which I just mentioned, Dhammachakra Parivartan, even that was also kind of a largest social translation Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar looked at. So translations are what we intend to do and what we are able to do, able to produce it in terms of action. I think that is translation that we can consider as a translation. So largely translation is an act of adaptations, and this act of adaptation and negotiation, and it is a creative act. The larger connotation, the larger essence of my talk is going to be how translation is a creative act, how translation becomes kind of adaptation. And as I mentioned, the translator is an individual who translates from the source language to the target language, is always engaged in a process of negotiation between two cultures, two languages, and two different mindsets. And as I myself have translated one famous Marathi novel called Fakira by Annabhav Sathe, I've translated that into English, and this is my practical experience with the translation, that how at a dialect level, when it comes to colloquial expressions, phrases, the translation becomes so difficult, particularly if the translator does not have greater exposure greater exposure with the linguistic nuances and cultural nuances of that particular language. That becomes highly difficult. That's why it's a kind of a negotiation between the source language and the target language, and so is also source culture and the target culture. Without having deeper and profound understanding of both of them, I think it will be very, very difficult to make translation. Translation also demands a kind of a profound understanding of both fluency in languages, that from both the languages that source as well as the target language. It's a kind of a complex creative process of adapting one text into new reality and mediating between the source as well as target language. Friends, sorry. Translation means to render a text that is in a particular language. It is like to another language. It's accurate transference of information in order to represent the original document to the target document. For any writer, being translated is always kind of a flattery. But it is also kind of a delicate, very, very delicate kind of a passage, because the translation implies a transformation of the text as an author, which normally authors do not have any control over. In fact, Roland Barthes talks about this particular thing, that once the text is out, the control over the text is completely lost by the author. And so Roland Barthes talks about death of an author. And this death of an author is nothing but the text once becomes entity in the market, then it becomes the entity of the readers. It becomes the entity of this whole world, and the author loses complete control over the text. So when the translation process happens, even it's the same thing. That it is completely at the freedom of the translator. But does the translator have any this kind of freedom to mold the text from the mold the text fundamentally? Though there's no such liberty, but in the whole process of translation, these kind of loopholes, these kind of gaps always remain there. And many of the times, translator, consciously or unconsciously, has to discount on the loss of the meaning, which actually the process is responsible, not that the deliberate efforts in that direction. But as a whole, translation is a kind of a creative act. The whole argument here is translation is a creative act. And so translator is creator. In what sense translator can be called as creator? Because in order to obtain the same impact and effects and atmosphere of a text in the target language, one has to modify the original. And this modification of the original, to an extent, I guess here are very experienced, venerable translators are also in this group right now in the audience. They would agree to me that the translator needs to recreate the connections that would be lost with a rigid translation. So one cannot be really very rigid about it, and he has to take into account the cultural background of both the languages. Translator has to really grasp the music of the text, because language has a rhythm, and that rhythm in the source language and the target language, if the translator misses that out, I think the very spirit of the translation or the original text will be lost. And it is in this sense we can say that the translator has to really recreate his translation and bring in rhythm as similar as possible to the original. A skilled translator injects a very healthy dose of creativity in this. For example, in the act of translation, it is called as a creative process, and virtually it is inseparable in literary translation. So when translation is happening, there is definitely creativity simultaneously happening. Translation is translating a content is a kind of a rewriting act. And in this rewriting act, translators face the kind of a complex task, using different words to archive same meaning. This are highly required, crucial skills for the translators. Translation is writing element, is basic raw material translators will have to bring into their work. Considering that the writing is a creative act, there can be no doubt that equally translations is a creative act as well. This creativity in translation further goes to a level where the skilled translator also deals with some of the most common problems in translation, and often the translators will be torn between representing versus content, because the original versus the new content that the translator is creating. Creativity is the thing that can find a harmonious balance between the two languages. The whole process of translation, because of that, becomes kind of art. It's more an art than a science. And there's also the kind of aesthetics of translation involved in it. What is that aesthetics of translation? It always demands that when the translation, the poets, the writers, the authors, novelists, when they do create their own genre of literature, piece of literature, when that is to be translated into other language, I think one has to really think about the aesthetics of translation. What does that really talks about? You know, some poets and writers and philosophers have explained how art of language is the most important aspect in literature, without which probably the whole gamut of literature would be incomplete. So I would like to quote some of the critics who, what are they saying about, what are their opinions about the process of translation. We have Coleridge. S.T. Coleridge says that literature is best words in the best orders. According to S.T. Coleridge, literature is best words in best orders. And he also says, whereas theorists like Bama opines that poetry is inseparable union of words and meaning, so translation does play an important role in it. R.L. Stevenson, he espoused that difficulty in literature is not to write, but to write what you mean. I think that's the greatest challenge. Many of the time we struggle with our own expressions. You want to say one thing and you end up saying something another, and that's how the meanings and messages are misunderstood. And I think what R.L. Stevenson says, this goes exactly something like this, wherein what you intend to say and what you're saying and what is perceived, a lot of gap remains in the whole process. The aesthetics of translation also focuses on another aspect, like Oscar Wilde brings an important observation in this. Sorry, wherein he says no literature is good literature or bad literature. A significant point is he brings it. No literature is good literature or bad literature, but well-written literature or badly written literature. Okay, so how the mental process, thought process is expressed, is displayed in the form of words, that defines the quality of the literature. So it is not good or bad literature, but good or badly written literature, according to Oscar Wilde. And so on the one hand, we have critiques and poets who talked about how readers interpret language and literature relationship. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, Roland Barthes is there, Wolfgang Iser, Stanley Fish, and the other critics, they also talked about this whole process of translation and the aesthetics of translation. There are also several reasons why translation is a creative process. Translation is certainly a creation. It is not merely transferring thought from one language to another, but it is a highly creative process. It's because we need to also understand about the translator has to really understand both the languages. He has to work with both the languages. While doing that, he himself is creative. He also brings in points like he also has to understand the psychology of the readers from one language to another, how the readers will read it, and what would be the possible interpretation, because there are so many multiple synonyms for the word. The context of the text, the cultural context, even the geopolitical situation of the text also needed to be taken into consideration. And so in real sense, the translator is nothing but he does not translate, but he recreates the text. And it is in this sense, translation is a creative process. Sometimes the translator needs to guess what the author means. An understanding of the subject matter, imagination always, as S.T. Coleridge writes, imagination always have two different types of imagination, and imagination is highest form of creation according to S.T. Coleridge. And so the translator has to be really very good at imagination, which bases the creativity. Once the translator understands the source text, he needs to recreate it in a target text. And to do this, translator needs to follow the style, register, genre, and this requires more understanding of language and text as a whole. The text created or translated by the translator is a kind of a very, very ideal situation. And it is understood perfectly well by the different cultural backgrounds, very different experiences from those of typical source audience and text audience. Now, that's just so, remembering or considering all these factors that I talked about, the process of translation, the final conclusive word about the whole process, what springs to my mind, is nothing but creativity. So translation is original creativity. Now this creativity uses what? It uses language. It many of the times surprises the audience. It also gives kind of a fresh meanings and many fresh words. I'm very, very surprised with some of the processes of translation, wherein the translators in the process of translation also come out with new words, and that become kind of a practice, regular practice for the readers too. So vocabulary is an important thing, that how the translators play with the vocabulary. The translator also has to be equipped with that kind of skill to surprise the readers, because not only in the source text, but the similar kind of a spirit and that element of noviceness, newness also has to be transferred in the target language. And for that purpose, entertaining through surprise is also the skill that the translator need to possess. He also gives fresh and new meanings to the words. Translators also provide most appropriate words and sentences, patterns for corresponding feelings and ideas which readers otherwise do not have. Many of the time, the reading translated text is kind of an elevated experience, and it elevates and brings something to the sublime experience for the readers. And it is in this sense, the whole process of translation is certainly a creativity. Usually the process of translation has certain steps. Just to mention few, that first to analyze the data. For example, I give my own example. I'm not very established translator as such, but whatever basic knowledge I have with which I underwent one successful translation, first of all, we need to do some research and doing a research about that book, getting basic information, dialect from which place, which locality, which cultural background the textbook is coming from. There would be many, many words that even if your mother tongue basically is the same, that the source text is from, but in spite of that, one may not be really familiar with all the dictions, the diction which is used in the source language. That's why doing a lot of research and getting more information about the text is the first step. Then analyzing the text, that from which period it belonged to, and what are the thematic concerns in the text. And also then developing a translating glossary. This translating glossary would be particularly because if the textbook is the text that we are translating, if it is as Dr. Parin Somanimam just mentioned, that one of the translations, for example, based on entertainment industry, or so what kind of category of the text that you are translating that demands kind of a preparations and research. If the text is originally from historical background, then a lot of historical glossary has to be ready when one is doing the translation. Then developing translation glossary. Apart from this, writing the first draft, then intermediate draft translation, editing it for giving it a proper style, then formatting the translation, and then comes the final translation, after which reviewing it for the accuracy, then proofreading and delivering the product, and finally then the larger audiences, getting feedback from both audiences as well as critics and the senior readers, devoted readers. I think these are some of the stages in translation. It would be interesting to know that what's going on presently in translation area. And we are all academicians, scholars connected here on this platform across the globe. And I'm not telling you anything new about translation, because we all are aware that it is one of the fastest growing industry in academics and otherwise also. It's a huge industry. And so internationally, in contemporary times, we see that translation industry is one in academics that is booming so fast. And as a result, we can call it a global industry in contemporary times. And its relevance is multiplying day by day. We also see that circulation and dissemination of knowledge with which the speed with which it is happening because of translation industry, we basically understand that the world-class books are translated in all major world languages, and the readers are given a rich experience, a rich store of knowledge transferred from different parts of the world in the local languages, in the globe, from the global languages. And this is an amazing contribution that the translation world is giving a gift to all the international readers. I'm amazed to see the kind of a pace with which international books are translated into Marathi, and we have all the classics, world classics, are available in Marathi language, and there's also equally a reverse kind of a flow, wherein from Marathi to English and Hindi and other languages, great amount of translation is also available. And it's a very, very optimistic scenario internationally in academics. And that's why the scholars and those potential translators who really feel to enter into this arena, I think it's a really one very dynamic kind of stream of knowledge, wherein it welcomes all the translators. Just to quickly update you about one such kind of a project which is going on in University of Hyderabad, which basically is translating from literature from Marathi to English, and nationally there are more than 50 translators as a part of this this particular translation project. Dr. Bhimrao Bhosle from University of Hyderabad, head of the Department of Translation Studies, has undertaken this particular project, and I'm one of the coordinators of this project. I greatly feel elated about it, and I'm just sharing, if those who are good at translating text from Marathi to English, I think you can definitely contact me or Dr. Bhimrao Bhosle from University of Hyderabad. Last point I would share with you, just to stop myself from overtaking your time. Copyright issue is one thing that I would like to discuss. Friends, there's one challenge about this copyright issue when we are translating. There are a lot of technical details into this, but just quickly to update and share some details with you is that translated literature is it copyrighted? Yes, definitely. The source text that we are translating, is it copyright material? Of course, yes. So this copyright issue has to be very subtly dealt with, and one should understand the the legal nuances about it, and only then we should go ahead with this. Literary translation as a trade operates within the framework of copyright law. So one must understand it. It's a society of authors, but what is more fascinating about it is how literary translation is actually defined by society of authors. In fact, this society of authors internationally has defined certain parameters, certain rules, regulations about translation, and one must understand this before we enter into this arena. When the Copyright Act refers to literary works, it places no limitations on their style or quality. All kinds of books, plays, poems, short stories, and other writings are covered, including such items as collection of jokes and script of a documentary, a travel guide, a science textbook, and an even opera libretto. An artist who replicates an existing artwork, for example, a painting of a living artist, would never be in communication with the artist of the original piece in order to get a message right and better understand the text. So this copyright issue is one we should be very cautious about. With these words, friends, it's not my claim, but all the established scholars have already have written tremendously on this issue, that how translator as a text creator, so every translation is nothing but a new creation, recreation. With these words, friends, I thank you, all of you, for your patient listening. And once again, thank you so very much, Narayan Borwake College and the authorities. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Dr. Bairam, for your overwhelming speech in a very natural tone. So you have really, that means your tone, the way of presentation, and really all the speakers, they have easily understood the importance of translation and the feelings which could be, which should be translated in the second language or in the target language. Thank you very much. I'm glad to say that our President of our local managing committee, Honorable Minatai Jagdane, she is on the screen. She has spared her time with us, and she is here. She is here among us to guide us. And I request Minatai, the chairman of our local managing committee and member of managing council of our Right Shikshan Sanstha, which is one of the largest institute in India. Around 5 lakh students, they are enrolled every year, and with our able leadership, our institution is flourishing day by day. I request to please give your motivation and welcome all the participants.
Good morning on behalf of Right Shikshan Sanstha, Rao Abdul Narayan Borwake College, Srirampur. I welcome all the participants from India and abroad. I wish you all the best for the webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tai. Thank you for your overwhelming response and encouraging the participants. Please, Vara sir, please.
I request Dr. Gaikwad sir to continue your session, please, sir.
Sir, already it's over. Dr. Harsha ma'am, now. Okay. Dr. Harsha ma'am.
Next, may I request a second speaker of the webinar, Dr. Harsha Vishwanath, Assistant Professor in English from MSM College, Kayamkulam, Kerala. She will talk on transcreation in entertainment industry. Madam is joining from Kerala. Please, ma'am. Dr. Harsha Vishwanath.
Good morning, everyone. I think I'm audible. Yes, thank you.
Good morning.
Most respected Minatai ma'am, the principal Dr. Nana Sahib Gaikwad, my co-presenter of today, the resource person, and my friend Dr. Balram Gaikwad sir, parents Somni ma'am, and all the other delegates and participants of this webinar. In fact, it gives me great pleasure to be here this morning sharing a few thoughts that I have on transcreation. And I'm really thankful to Pareen Samani ma'am because she has already introduced the topic very well to the audience. So I think that has laid the foundation, and Gaikwad sir has spoken, and he has spoken about the role of the translator. So I think there is no need for any more introduction from my part. So I'll move straight to the content itself. So today I'll be sharing a few very interesting facts. I think as Sunil sir has told me that there are many student participants. So I'd like to give some small, I'll share a few things with you which will be quite entertaining as such because it's from the entertainment industry. So, sir, can I share my screen now?
Share. Yes.
So today's topic of discussion is about transcreation in audio-visual media, in fact. And as we know from the very introductory speech itself that transcreation is a merger of two words, that is translation and creation. and it's an intrinsic form of translation that preserves the original intent, context, emotion, and tone. And it was originally conceived by the marketing and advertising professionals who had this goal of transcreation to duplicate the message, which had to be done quite thoughtfully because they had to know about an audience to which this was about to be shared to. And the finished product should give the audience an identical emotional experience as the source message itself. So transcreation is much more than translation. It takes the original message and conveys it in another language. At the same time, it makes quite sure that the text in the target language keeps the original style, vocal tone, and emotional salience. And this becomes a combination of, to say, discipline and art, translation, as well as an interpretation of the whole thing. So the process is that it re-evaluates the marketing material produced for a local market, and there is a kind of a reconfiguration in order to appeal to an audience with a very different culture. So the process of transcreation here is understanding the target market, and then you have to carefully tailor the message using suitable imagery, style, and tone for appeal. So it should have an appeal, and at the same time, the message should be effective. So transcreation becomes like, rather, it requires the ability to transcend language and cultural barriers if you really want to successfully value the global marketing strategies. So in order to compete, what the marketers do is that they have to evaluate the cultural dimensions of their target markets, understand the consumers' attitudes, behavior, and beliefs, and later they have to create an impact in these markets using the transcreated messages. So it is in this state that creative translations or transcreations become a necessity. And what is the difference between a transcreation? How does it differ from translation? How transcreation differs from translation? That is my second topic of discussion. See, in translations, we usually replace the words in one language with corresponding words in a new language, whereas transcreation focuses on conveying the same message and concept in a new language. Because of this, the translators have to inject their own creativity and also the cultural knowledge to create content that resonates with the new audience. That's very important. You have to resonate your thought with the new audience. And a transcreator has to recapture and recreate the brand's message itself. And here also, the copywriting, graphic design, and video productions have to be kept on the same. And the result is that the brand new messaging is targeted and localized. I'll later come to what is localization, because localization is very important when you speak about transcreation. And then transcreation becomes creating a rather new content that captures the brand's voice and message in an entirely new language. At the same time, they make use of the emotional content like marketing campaigns and slogans for it. Now, a few things that we have to be very careful when we go for this transcreation is that we have to be very sure about the language in which we are translating, because idioms, slangs, and there are certain cultural associations which vary from country to country. For example, I'll give an example. For example, we have idiom in English to kill two birds with one stone, whereas the same idiom is translated in a very different way among the Germans, and it is hit two flies with one blow. And again, when it comes to the Chinese, it is shoot two hawks with one arrow. See how the differences move on. The same thing is being spoken in quite a different way to suit to the cultural needs of the place. And then about the analogies, which again have to be handled with care, because what is common in one country might be inappropriate or irrelevant in another. So in this, we have to say, I'll take the example of how Walt Disney has dealt with it. So in US, Walt Disney's World Resort is described as half the size of Rhode Islands, whereas the same scenario is described in Japan as the size of Tokyo subway system. And when it comes to UK, you present the same resort as what? The size of Greater Manchester. So there is a change. You have tried to identify it with different landmarks that were familiar to the cultural group. And again, when you do with the advertisements, you have to give more importance to the visuals as such. You have to give importance to a mixed gender, if it's like that, or you have to portray the mixed race if it is to reach to a multiple race place. And again, when it comes to the Indian scenario, we have to give or the Indian advertisements mostly give value to strong families. Here we have seen that many times the mythical characters are brought on stage to do certain ads, or maybe you have a Kathakali there dancing which reflects, or maybe as you have seen the Amul cheese spreads ad, you see a Kathakali there, you have different items from all around India to show that this is something that can be consumed by all the people in different states. And when you are thinking about the jingles that come with it, you have to find the right word. Many times we have seen that Prasar Bharati's many ads, when they are translated to our mother tongue, it looks quite old. You find that something is missing out, because when you have to do with a jingle, you have to find the right word and it should fit into the tune itself. For that, the tone matters, the content matters, because we pronunciation in Argentina where it is pronounced as Pepsi, because they don't pronounce the word PEP. The P there becomes the C there. So these kinds of pronunciational differences also matter. Now I will take a few examples from the advertisement world to show you how this works in. Now I'm taking these examples because I know the teaching faculty would have easily they know about all this, but this is for the students who are attending the webinar. See, this is something now I want to speak about how a trans creator has to make cultural adjustments. So this is a famous McDonald's ad. So I am loving it. Now this is their iconic tagline, that is, I am loving it. But when they moved on to the Chinese market, they opted against it because the literal translation would be a very serious problem in China. Because traditionally the Chinese never spoke the term love. They never spoke it out. So for them, what McDonald opted was, I just like it. They had used the term like instead of love. Then again, another advertisement, now Coca-Cola, this is very familiar to all. Now this, I'll show how cultural sensitivity makes the creators of art ad to make slight changes in them. For example, when this Coca-Cola was imported in 1920 to China, they had a problem with the name because the Chinese characters have both a meaning and a sound. So when they wrote this Coca-Cola, then it became a nonsensical meaning, and the nonsensical meaning was bite the wax tadpole. See how horrible it will look, right? If a drink has a meaning like that. So what they did is that they changed the way it was pronounced in China. And that was Koku-kulai. They changed it to Koku-kulai, where the meaning was a pleasure in the mouth. See how it was easily changed. So this is how they adapted. This is how transcreations work in the advertisements field. Now the next is, I think this is even more interesting, because sometimes you have or many people may have a common language, but they may be divided by cultural factors that stop communications from working itself. Now, this is the logo of Orange Communications, very famous in UK. So what happens is that the Northern Ireland, they have a strong sectarian divide between Catholics and Protestants that we cannot find anywhere else in UK. And what happens is that the reason behind this is that in 1690, the Protestant king, William of Orange, he was defeated by a Catholic army, and ever since, Orange became a symbol of the Protestants. And because of that, the tagline that followed this Orange communication was like this: the future's bright, the future's orange. And it did quite well in UK, but this product could not be marketed properly in the Catholic population of the Northern Ireland because of this one particular association of the color with the Protestant. So that's again a quite interesting factor. Now, you all are very familiar with this one vehicle, right? Pajero. Now, when we speak about the Pajero, we have to remember how even brand names has to be changed many times by the advertising agencies or by the factories or the brands themselves. The reason is that the Mitsubishi Pajero SUV was named after a pampas cat of Argentina, and the scientific name of that cat was Leopardus pajeros. So that's how it got its name. But then the problem was that in Spain and Latin America, Pajero, actually the word had a meaning, a very derogatory sexual term. It was in Spanish. So they had to change the title to Montero, as Montero meant mountain warrior. See, this is how even the brand names have to be changed many a times to suit to this kind of this kind of situations. From this, I would love to move towards game studies. Now, game studies is actually ludology, and the term was coined by, I can't say coined, it was Gonzalo Franca who actually came up with this term. And this game studies was in fact the study of games. No more than the study of games, it was the act of playing them, the players and the culture that surrounded them. And naturally, in this field of research, you can utilize cultural heritage, sociology and psychology, at the same time examining aspects of the design of the game, the players in the game, and the role the game plays in its society or culture. We have to understand that the social sciences, they explore this area of how games function in society and their interactions with human psychology. Whereas the humanities studies, they approached or they emphasize how games generate meaning and reflect in social and cultural discourses. Whereas we have the whole genre of game studies being researched by the ethnographic researchers who patiently observe games and try to understand their social and cultural meaning that goes with each game. And very recently, I read a very interesting article by Peter Gray, who spoke about in his research paper about cognitive benefits of playing video games. His argument is that when you play video games, these games help to improve the cognitive abilities. It improves, or there is an improvement of visual contrast sensitivity. And also he spoke about how it enhances the brain functioning speed, and he recommended that we should allow children with dyslexia to play these cognitive games because it helped them to overcome their conditions. Now, this was a very interesting field of study, but I won't go very deep into it because I know there will be some researchers who might be on the looking of some topics and things like that. This is a very interesting area that you can pursue, an area which is not so explored. So it's a very interesting session to study about the games, how it goes. For that, now I'm moving on to video gaming and how the so-called transcreation happens in video gaming with special reference to how localization works in video gaming. So localization itself, if you look into it, it's adapting a product of content to a specific locale or market. And it's not only bringing it to a desired local look and feel, but more than that, the process includes many changes. That is including you alter certain art assets, you create new packings, you create new manuals, you re-record new videos, there is this transforming of hardware, you may cut out a whole portion of the game, maybe sometimes due to cultural sensitivities, and sometimes you have to add a new area to it. So this is how you market it to a new place. So this video game localization is a dynamic field that is driven by technology, because technology is used there. There are market demands to be fulfilled, and it's always influenced by popular discourse on games. So when you are preparing a video game software, you have to make sure how it will adapt to the new cultural area. For this, you have to find local artists with knowledge of the ethos of the society into which this has to be wrapped in. And it's not only about adapting it linguistically, visually, and culturally. Rather than that, you have to create this suspension of disbelief in them, because the player has to feel that the product is made for them. It's only then the localization is perfect. Otherwise, it will create confusion and difficulty in the players to play it. They might not take up the game as such. So when we go through this, we have to look into the different levels of localization which we can adapt. The first is no localization at all. You take the game and it is introduced into a new region without any kind of a change being brought to them. The next kind of localization is the box and document localization, where the manual of the game will be translated. And then you have this partial localization where the text is translated, but voice-over files are not used, because it's a where the whole games this postcode localization model where the game will be released, and then after some time you have the translated version released into the market after seeing the success of the first level. Whereas in the sim-ship localization, what happens is that you simultaneously release the original as well as the translated version of the game. So these are some of the elements that one has to keep in mind when you go for localization, that is adapting graphics to target market, modifying content, then adapting design and layout, how to convert it into the local requirements. That is, you have to change the currencies and measures, you have to wrap in the new dates, addresses, local addresses, phone numbers, and also there are some legal requirements, because the legal processes differ from country to country. Now, I will love to show an example to almost wind up with my discussion today. It's two versions of the same game. The first is Nair Replicant, which is a Chinese game made for the audience of China. So here is how it goes. In this Japanese session, you find that it was released in say 2010, and it's based on my video seen?
Yes, we can see your video.
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
So that was the first part of the presentation. And now I allow to show the other one. Can the participants see my screen? Now the first part that we saw was a creation, something that was created for the Japanese audience, and it was based on the siblings relationship where the protagonist Nair, he tries to save his sister Yona. But we have to not be taken in a proper sense in the American or the European version. So they convert So by differentiating between these two, it will be very interesting to know So there is a lot of difference between the first and the second one. In the first, it is an adolescent boy who's trying to fight for his sister. Whereas when it was readapted, when it was recreated, we find that it actually speaks about a man who fights for his daughter. The whole scenario is changed. If you see the buildings, there is a change. And the music, everything is the same, but at the same time, the cultural background has been changed. The way they speak, the way they fight, the way they look, there is a change in that. And this is because of the standard approach to multi-platform games, where the same game is always, offered on different platforms, which gives an opportunity to introduce a region-specific version. And these games, they usually address different regions by, featuring different landmarks according to the locale and things like that. And many times we find that vulgarities are masked by pseudo-censorship symbols and all that. So this is how it marks. So this is how one game, when it is transcreated into another, it changes. And similarly, we have this last slide I'll present. It's about the game Final Fantasy. If you have time, please go. You can just read on it. The Final Fantasy, which was again done by this Square Enix group. When it was first localized in 1977, there was a lot of criticism because of the wrong phrases that they used. And it's later you see that when they developed the Final Fantasy 11 and then on, there was this local artist being introduced, and they produced this knowledge of the ethos. They had this knowledge of the ethos of the people of the other countries, and it became a huge success. Even today, I think it is the Final Fantasy which stands first in the field of gaming. And the main things, to conclude, the main things that we have to keep in mind when we go for transcreating games, the first one is that you have to focus on the cultural background. You have to take into consideration the ethos of the people of the new country, and you have to create it in such a way that it gets synced into the geopolitical situations of the place. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable practical insights. I'm sure this will go a long way in getting the complexities of transcreation to entertainment industry, no matter what the nature of entertainment industry is having today. Thank you once again, ma'am. I request to the participants, if you want to ask any query or doubt, you can ask it right now regarding these sessions. Already we had 2 sessions. So you can ask the queries regarding ma'am's session, then we'll ask about sir's session. There is one question I received. What are the process one has to undergo if one wish to translate a book? This is a question to ma'am. What are the process one has to undergo if one wish to translate a book?
I think the question is for Gaikwad, sir.
Okay, Gaikwad sir. This is a question for you, sir. What are the process one has to undergo if one wish to translate a book? Dr. Gaikwad sir from Mumbai.
So let it be, sir. Let me just. Let it be. We'll turn to next
Wait.
participant.
Oh, please unmute Gaikwad, sir. He is giving a message like that. Please unmute him.
Wait,
He's
sir.
not able to speak.
Wait, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Actually, I was muted, so couldn't answer. Yeah.
Sorry.
Would you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir. The question is, what are the process one has to undergo if one wish to translate a book?
Right. Okay. Well, I already commented about it, but I repeat again that the process of translating a book begins with a lot of research about the book, the background, the historical background, the context, the culture, and most importantly, the ready collection of glossary for that particular kind of a text. If it is scientific text, if it is a novel, if it is a pure literary text, what kind of a book that we are going to translate related to that, some advanced preparations, then copyright issues related to this, and also I think the publications and all comes much in a later stage. But initially we must be aware about the dialects. If there are so many dialectic expressions are used, then one should also be prepared for that. These I guess are the general preparations for translating any text.
Okay, sir. Okay. There is one more question.
I hope I have
In
answered
chat
the
box.
question.
Yes, sir. There is one more question in chat box. What precautions being a translator has to take while translating poems? Dr. Gaikwad, sir?
Hello, is it for me, sir? Yeah.
Sir.
Okay.
There is one more question in chat box, sir.
Honestly, Right. Honestly, I am not an authority or expert in to answer this, but I think largely all translations have certain kind of modalities, and poetic translation, I personally believe, is much more challenging because the kind of entire perspective to look at that composing or consisting the whole meaning, and particularly from one language to another, and that too in poetry, is really challenging kind of a job, unless extreme control over both the source and target language is there with the translator. I think it is difficult, but at the same time, I have personally seen many translators who translate both Marathi to English and vice versa. So absolute command over language and good vocabulary is the prime condition for any kind of translation, but that is more so with poetic translations.
Thank you, sir. I think the doubt is clear. I would rather suggest one more text. That is, those who wanted to come to know about the theoretical part of the translation. That is a book by Braj Kachru, Indianization of English. So this is one more thing for the reference. Sir, I'm sure your address will help a lot to understand the conceptual differences between the translation, transliteration, and English paraphrase. Is there any query?
Yeah. May I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can, sir. Yeah, please.
Yeah. This is Professor Ganesh Wag from Anna Sahib Auti College, Manchar. My question is to Harsha. As you know that meaning, message, and culture plays an important role in translation. So my question is, why literal translation doesn't necessarily work in other cultures and languages? I repeat my question.
Yes, sir.
Why literal translation doesn't necessarily work in other cultures and languages?
Dr. Harsha.
My question is to Harsha.
Yes, sir. Your question is quite clear. The main reason is that even though we have certain, English is a language that is followed by most of the people. Many of them know that. But when you move from one culture to other, for example, when you see an American movie, you find that they can use any kind of languages, and there are some kind of, what becomes a foul language in our place is not so deterioratory in US. They use it, they speak about it, they show the sexual rooms, or they use the sexual terms and all that. But when it comes to a society like India or the Japanese society, which is a more kind of a close kind of a society, the audience are not ready to accept it. For the Japanese, for them, every an adolescent boy is a trained warrior. We find so they have to change the whole scenario. So every society has its own cultural values associated with those of the society, and because of that, what happens? They have to keep changing. And in this, for this question, I will like to point out one more thing that I have read while I was preparing for this transcreation, that if you had to market a similar kind of a game, if you had to market that in Germany, you have to make sure that there is no bloodshed. And for that, what happens? The players at the two end, they are playing. You don't know whether that particular enemy has been killed or not. For that, you have only a symbol or a color coming down the screen, which indicates that the enemy is killed, because you cannot show blood. After Hitler's time, they're not supposed to show this kind of bloodshed on screen. So again, you have to convert a lot more things if you want to market a game in Germany. Similarly, you cannot use the terms, certain words in China. You have to again translate it, because there is this meaning between how you write, and there is meaning for each symbol. So these kind of cultural background need to be studied. That's why you have to roll in, or you have to take in the local artists to do the work. So what the game developers do is that they take these people from they call on these local artists. They sit together in the same studio and they work out the game, so that the cultural essence is not lost. The ethos is preserved. We know even the translation of text. If we write anything wrong about, say, about a myth, the next day you know how it goes on. How we had to change the title of Padmavati to Padmavat. So these kind of ethos problems are there all around the world, which have to be taken care, because this kind of trans-created piece of video costs millions of dollars, which they cannot waste. So they make sure that every every sect of the society is satisfied. So I think.
So do you think that So do you think that translation or transcreation is a kind of culture specific?
Of course, it's culture specific, because I know when Jayashree Mishra's Rani was translated, the novel Rani was translated, it didn't face any problem in Kerala. You could buy that text from anywhere here, but it was banned in many other parts of our country.
But what I like to say is, like, when an Indian woman, when she loses her husband, okay, particularly in Marathi, we say that power's kunku pusla. So I'm not able to just translate in Kerala. Okay, but it becomes rather different in English. That she suppose if I translate it in English, like she wiped out her raised spot on her forehead. So that doesn't have the meaning. Okay, that has a cultural value. That is what I want to say.
So we have to recreate it in such a way that it suits the new culture.
So I think a transcreation or translation has some limitations of its own, like cultural or
Of course, because there, in Malayalam or in Hindi, we have so many words to describe different relations. You have mama and everything for specific relations. Whereas if you have to translate that into English, it's all uncle. You don't know which uncle is which.
Yeah, thank you, Akshay.
Thank you, Vak sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Vak sir, for your question. Any other person who want to ask a question?
Sir, please start.
If not, then I would like to request Ma'am Hall Naibo, who is Associate Professor at Christian University, Indonesia, to share your experience of this webinar. Dr. Lamhot Naibo from Indonesia.
Okay, thank you for given to me.
Okay, sir, welcome.
Namaste to all of us here and good afternoon, because now in Indonesia it's afternoon already.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, namaste, sir.
The most respected person, Madam Professor Minatai, as the member of Managing Council College, and also the most respected person, Professor Prin Gaikwad, as the principal of RB Narayanro Barawake College, Sri Rampur, and the most respected person, Professor Sunil Dakar, as the convener and the head of Department of English. And My Excellency, the keynote speaker, Professor Parin Zumani, nice to meet you. And then My Excellency, the resource person today, Professor Baliram, and then Professor Harsha Pizana. It's a beautiful moment today to know everybody is in this Zoom also, and the most qualified speakers, which are invited today to talk about transcreation in literature. Okay, I'm Lamhot Naibaho. I'm an associate professor at Christian University of Indonesia, and I'm a lecturer at English Education Department. Besides being a lecturer, I'm the head of research at our university. That's why it's an honor to me to be invited as a special guest today by a best university, one of the best university in, one of the best college in India, that is Narayanro Barawake College. After when I was talking to the head of the department, and I soon checked in the internet. I browsed the internet and I find that Barawake College has been accredited with the greatest accredited result. It's an A+, and then with the grade 3.44, and I'm very interested. I talk also to directors of our university that if it is possible later on, if it is possible, and we are going to have such collaboration in research with this college. We've talked to the head of departments also, Mr. Sunil, and he was very he's very interesting. He's very interesting in doing the collaboration with our university. So now I'm working on the MOU. So next week or not next 2 weeks, I can send it to this college. Okay, so I do thank to Mr. Professor Sunil and Professor Sagar Diveka for this very kind invitation. What I would like to tell or to share is about the transcreation itself. I think the topics of this seminar is a very good and challenging topic. Why do I say that? Because this is a new thing for me. What I know before is only translation skill. While I don't learn about how to make creativity in translating a text. As we talked today, transcreation comes from the word translate and creation and creativity. As it is talked by Mrs. Professor Harsha just now. And I am wondering, or I have a proverb to all of us here. It is said in the proverb that it's not just what we say, but it's how we say it. So I think when I realize, when I take a deep insight to the proverb just now I talked to you, then of course transcreation is very important. Moreover, nowadays we are living in a digital era. Of course, by living in a digital era, then we are free to take all of the sources in learning. Moreover, for university students. Yeah, so I think by understanding or by mastering the transcreation skills will give us more chance, yeah, more power or more knowledge about the translation itself. And the chance given us, we are going to be able to offer to all of the world a very good translation result. While as before I tried to do a research on a translation, and then I found the research is about how Google's Translate, yeah, the effectivity of Google Translate in translating text, and some other machines or some other tools which offer translation to all of us here. And I see that the ability of the translation tools is not so effective, or the accuracy is not so good, because it's such a machine. The machine doesn't know about anything about the intent, the style, the tone, the context, or the cultural background of the source language that we are translating into target language. As I say that as a new person to this paradigm, because I'm actively teach students in English education department, so we don't, I'm not very familiar with these kinds of transcreation. So after watching the three speakers when they were presenting what transcreation is, and I'm very wondering, I'm very astonished to know this new knowledge to me. And I need to study more and more. I will take your contact number from the head of the department, and we can talk further about this new knowledge. I can guarantee if after doing research on this, we can offer all the words and new things, yeah, new things. Like let's say we can suggest to the creators of the translation tools, yeah, that we might use in the internet to do or to make greater translation in the website itself or in the tools itself. Of course, as I told you just now, that when somebody when we are translating the text using the Google translation, of course it will not help a lot, because the machine doesn't know anything about the cultural background of a language itself. Okay, I think that's all I would like to say to everybody. And Thank you very much to those speakers and to the organizers of this seminar. And this is very important, of course, to everybody. And the seminar is really well organized. Thank you, Mr. Sunil and friends, everybody. I'm Lamhot. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you for your guest appearance in this webinar, sir. Thank you very much. There is one question I received in chat box. Can you recommend a few good books regarding translation process? There is a question in chat box. Can you recommend a few books regarding translation process? A question raised by Damini Sharma.
Is the question regarding to me or to the speaker?
If you can, sir, please.
Okay. Actually, as I told you before, I'm not very familiar with the translation, so I think the speaker will be best to answer that.
So I
question.
pass this question. I pass this question to Dr. Gaikwad, sir.
Sir, in the chat box, I'll send you some of the books list, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank
Hello?
you. Huh, sir.
Sure.
I'm getting it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone who want to ask? Okay. If not, then may I now request my colleague in the department, Mr. Shafiq Sheikh, to propose the vote of thanks. Shafiq Sheikh, sir.
Thank you, Viral sir. On behalf of the Department of English of Rail Shikshan Samsthas, Rao Bahadur Narayan Rao Boroke College, Rampur, I would like to propose vote of thanks. We are fortunate today to listen to vibrant and multidimensional speakers. First of all, I extend my sincere gratitude towards the keynote speaker from USA, Honorable Parin Somani ma'am, for her valuable inputs on the occasion of this webinar. I also express my gratitude towards resource persons of the webinar, respected Dr. Balram Gaikwad sir and respected Dr. Harsheshwar ma'am, for accepting our invitation and interacting with the participants. I am also thankful to Honorable Minatai Jagdane madam, member of Managing Council, Rail Shikshan Sanstha Satara, and the President of College Development Committee. We are really grateful to her for her blessings. We are thankful to Honorable Principal Dr. Ines Gaikwad for taking initiative in the organization of the webinar. I am also thankful to the Advisory Committee of the webinar. I must express my sincere gratitude towards the participants from India and abroad. I especially convey my gratitude towards Dr. Lemhot Naibo and his colleagues, as well as students from Indonesia for joining this webinar. We are grateful to the technical support team. Without their support, we could not have organized this webinar. Once again, thank you very much for making this webinar fruitful.